Albert Thompson. I'm the Managing Director of Digital at Walton Isaacson. We are a full-service agency who has probably made our name really in kind of the branded entertainment influencer space. So in the agency's history, we expanded into the sort of full-service media aspect, strategy planning. So we're much more, as you would say, in this day and age, kind of a closed-loop solution agency in terms of what we provide. And I think one of the things that we probably built our reputation on is the ability to leverage influence and influencers from, sort of the celebrity ranks all the way down to, your more basic sort of influencer type. When influence started to sort of take fold, sort of really give birth, and this comes out of the era of the blogosphere and then social media coming into the modern day nomenclature. I think a lot of the questions from brand agencies is how do we leverage the power of influence, starting with the basics of just word of mouth. I think the natural inclination is always to lead toward the celebrity stature. People who have the biggest impact, the biggest following, the biggest reach. I think what people start to understand is that those individuals may not always embody your brand values, and that it's a bit of a crapshoot and a one and done, that if this person doesn't set sail around the business, then the possibilities of failure. So we started to look towards, what does the consumer really identify with? I mean, yes, they love celebrities, they love mega influencers, but who can they best relate to it? And it's other consumers like themselves. So if you think about the notion of a micro-influencer, I mean, they are basically your common everyday consumer around a given category, product, or brand. The question is, now they can be harnessed to actually support business objectives. And that just wasn't as possible in the early going in terms of how do you curate the people that sit at the long tail of influence versus the people who sit at kind of the top of the threshold in terms of influence. So my presentation is really about sort of bringing awareness to how do you get there with micro-influence? What are some of the thinking? What are the things you need to dismiss in your preconceived notions of influence? How to curate them? How to structure them around a business and business objectives? And sort of wean yourself off that you need to go find someone who has Hollywood cachet. I think when people looked at spending a lot of money on people that existed at a higher level of threshold in terms of level of fanfare following, they were starting to look at the ROI. Are we getting the return for the amount that we are put in? And are they really genuine brand advocates, or are they doing it because it's a paid endorsement? So people really started to apply normal business models. I think with anything digital, there's always a wild, wild west period. Bit of a free-for-all, everybody's kind of doing everything, everybody's experimenting. Then when things start to normalize and settle down, people kind of come back to their business sense. And that's kind of where we are now. It's like, how do you attract this? How do you tailor this to the same kind of metrics and attributes that any other tactic we would do from a marketing standpoint? So most of it starts with, let's look at the framework. Let's look at what aligns with what we're trying to sell. And that's everything from where we sell, from logistically speaking, supply chain management, point of sale, what that looks like. Let's really understand our consumer set, how they think, what they do. I mean, people who buy and renew and are part of our loyalty programs. And then let's find influencers who are part of that mix, because that's a natural mix that moves the business, and they move it essentially continuously. So I think a lot of it just starts with really formalized around general basic business sense. Let's look at our normal framework or how we measure business outcomes. Let's start to think about influencers from a long tail perspective, how we can sort of curate them. Let's develop realistic budgets of how to plan around them. Let's understand the outcomes of what they're willing to do, and it's very different from dealing with a high-level celebrity to a micro-influencer who oftentimes is actually unpaid. And start to put some real thinking around what is the long-term viability of influencers in supporting moving the business. And I think that's just kind of the step one. You kind of have to bring your head out of the clouds of how you're going to get a Kardashian or someone who's got a major film coming up, or a new artist that's breaking an album. And just to understand that might be the celebrity for today, but who are going to be the consumers to build for tomorrow? I think that's the first sort of starting point of starting to look at how to think about micro-influence in the long view. When we started to get heavy into influence, we had to really quantify their viability as a selection. Similar to the way you look at Q scores for a celebrity that you might use in a TV spot. So we look at the social footprint, let's call it. What is the level of following and engagement around their Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, maybe even Tumblr profile? What is the expectation in terms of the uptick in terms of social action and activity around that individual in a sort of deterministic fashion? Present that to clients, talk about, here are the outcomes we expect, and what other bennies can we get out of the business relationship? What are the things they're willing to do because they're just kind of fans of the brand? So that's kind of the media math sort of conversation in terms of how you start. I think when you start to look at that portion, you look at tools that can get you there, similar to some of the offering that Meltwater has now with the influencer platform, where you can actually do the research, you can actually curate. You can basically do a workup of their profile and see if they're a fit for the brand. I think, the understanding now is clients is, okay, we're gonna essentially measure all this. And what will obviously be the key performance indicators we'll look at. So you'll look at, overall social impact, social reach, level engagement, number of people engaged. I think where it's going now is people starting to track it down the lower funnel. So to what degree did that tie into retail, and from driving people to retail to actually into product trial, to then quantifying the potential impact on sales, and even looking at, okay, now what's the strategy in terms of, product enhancements, new product introductions? How does that tailor to where we make sure we have enough supply based upon the influencer impact to drive people to a point of interest? So it's a lot more thought out in terms of the business objective. So it started kind of in the marketing camp or promotional camp around social media, and now it's coming down the entire supply chain of thinking of how they can help move product, move units, etc. And that's a complete evolution. When we look at tools like what Meltwater offers, and even some of the ones we've used in the past, it is the tracking along the journey. So I think from the initial promotion and onboarding of an influencer to the content that they see, the messaging that's essentially put out there, supporting that with paid social to help boost the content, then looking at the uptake of conversation around that influencer or influencers, and then starting to make some hypotheses and draw some conclusions in terms of how that's going to impact the product. And that's everywhere from sentiment to favorability, to does it seem to be the trial will be stimulated, and what can we expect in terms of outcomes, even getting into product reviews. And I think that's probably the one thing that comes out of that is the product sentiment, product review factor, which is key towards other consumers sort of following the conversation and deciding this might be something for me. Our thinking is very sort of unconventional. It's the ability to sort of think beyond the norms of what other people do. A lot of the things that we do from our thinking is very, very customized. Everything's kind of sort of tailor-made in terms of our interpretation of what best suits the brand based upon their personality, based upon their business objectives. I think there's always an element of a wow factor because of, we have people in the agency whose history and background is brand entertainment. Some people were former A&Rs. Some have been in talent management before. So beyond the tools, the platforms, and the science, the agency has a real feel for influence and really how it should look, how it should work, how to cater the conversation. How to even have direct conversations and not necessarily agent conversations, which are very different. I think the level of creativity in which we've curated influencers, I don't want to say it's unprecedented, it's probably unique. Some we've done direct, some we've done through agents, some we've done through influencer marketing firms, some we've done through platforms, some we've done a lot through actually media partners in which we've said, hey, we want to work with this individual, can you get to them? So there's a series of ways, in a pyramid structure in which we have organized influence around a given brand. And that's uncommon today. You have to have kind of, again, sort of a natural feel, a natural knack for the business and sort of who you're working with and dealing with talent-wise to just be able to do it. There are a lot of times I'm in conversations where I'm like, we don't need to do that, we do that ourselves. Or our notion is, because we do so much of ourselves, what can you offer beyond us and our ability? So I think that the fact that we've had a rich history in doing it, and we've been fortunate to have clients like Lexus who have kind of stayed the course with us in leveraging influencers pretty much since the first day we started working on their business. So for them, it's been a mainstay, but kind of behind every great agency success is always a client who's willing to take the risk. They and some of the other clients we've worked with have sort of been those clients for us, and that's really helped sort of, hone and refine our ability to stay ahead of the curve in terms of influence and where it's going. The biggest thing that I'd want people to take away is start from a perspective of being human-centered, customer-centered. Understanding how a customer is going to adopt your product, try the product, endorse your product, and really build from there. And then have a level of customer intimacy and your real understanding, and then start to look for how do you grow influence in and around that, sort of beyond that. Again, when you start to think about it, a lot of it's just kind of basic business sense. I think people get caught up in the acronyms and a bit of the hype and the industry buzz and the cool factor of what they see other brands do, and it gets very competitive. Competitive in the sense mentally that, we need to be doing that. We need to be working with so-and-so. We need the person who competes with that person to work on our brand. That's not necessarily the case. I think the other thing is that people chase influence in a manner that's not really structured for who they are. I think understanding inherently your own individual brand identity and how you have to shape the identity of influence around that and not kind of shoot way off the mark, trying to bring someone who has sort of Hollywood fandom into the confines and think they're going to be able to build a business. Brands who do that spend a lot of time understanding how someone at that level is really going to set the pace and the curve and the trajectory for their in-market opportunity. But those are rare. Those are coming the one in here. You think of Catherine Zeta-Jones with T-Mobile. There are only a few instances like that even happen in a given category. But for the most of us, you got to leave it to kind of the sort of common business sense understanding of how to build influence around how your business was built.